What happens when a woman who refuses to bow meets a cowboy who refuses to back down? The dawn light crept over Sagebrush Crossing like a slow-spilled ribbon of gold, brushing every rooftop, every window, every grain of dust with soft morning fire. June Hollis was already awake, standing in front of the forge her father built with his bare hands. The heat of the flames warmed her face. Her arms were already streaked with soot, and the smell of iron was as familiar to her as her own breath. She gripped the hoof of a restless black stallion between her knees. "Easy now, Duke," she murmured. "You kicked me today, and I'm selling you for glue." The stallion snorted but stilled under her steady hands. June never feared horses. Men gave her more trouble. Behind her, a voice spat out like bitter tobacco. "That beast'll crack your skull, girl!" She didn't look up. She knew the voice. One of the coach drivers. Always judging. Always talking. "If he does," she said, pulling the nails free with sharp, practiced movements, "he'll have to get in line behind everyone else." Quote. The man huffed, stepped closer, and spat into the dirt. "A woman working a forge. Ain't natural. Your daddy must be twisting in his grave." June finally lifted her head. Her green eyes were sharper than the tools hanging behind her. "My daddy taught me everything I know. If he's spinning, it's because fools won't stop talking." The man stomped off, muttering. June returned to her work, letting the steady ring of her hammer drown out his nonsense. The rhythm calmed her heartbeat, steadied her breath, and filled the small blacksmith shop with the sound she loved most: honest work. Then she heard it. A rumble like thunder rolling across the earth. A cattle drive. Dust rose on the horizon, and a long brown river of moving bodies swept down the street. At the front rode a man whose presence seemed to quiet the very wind. He dismounted near the livery with the kind of ease that only came from years in the saddle. His shoulders were broad beneath a trail-worn shirt, his hat was pulled low, and streaks of silver cut through his dark hair. His eyes, when he finally turned them toward June, were clear winter blue. He walked toward her forge, and for a moment June forgot how to breathe. "Morning, ma'am," he said with a voice smooth as warm whiskey. "Name's Colt Merrick. I'm looking for the blacksmith." June crossed her arms. "You found her." Most men blinked or scoffed. Colt didn't. His gaze traveled from her leather apron to the glowing forge behind her, and if he held any surprise, he hid it well. "Well then," he said, "I've got a proposition." He explained about a cracked wagon axle, half a dozen horses needing shoeing, and a schedule tighter than a knot in a wet rope. June listened, sizing him up. Hard-working. Honest eyes, calloused hands, not the kind who threw words without meaning. "How quick you need it?" she asked. 2 days, 3 at worst. Double pay." June hesitated. She needed the money. Her taxes were coming due and business had been slow. "I'll need half up front." Colt didn't haggle. He counted silver into her palm, his fingers brushing hers. His hands were rough like hers, warm and steady. "I'll bring the wagon around," he said, "and a mare who needs a special shoe. Rolled toe, lighter weight." June lifted an eyebrow. "Most cowboys don't know that kind of detail." "Most cowboys don't ride horses they love." His smile tugged at one corner of his mouth. "See you this afternoon, Miss Hollis." He walked away. June watched longer than she meant to. She shook it off. She didn't have time for foolish thoughts. But the heat in the forge suddenly wasn't the only warmth in the room. Hours later, she heard footsteps on the wooden floorboards. A scent of expensive cologne hit her nose. Jarvis Blackthorne, town council member. Snake in human clothes. "June," he said, dragging her name like syrup. "Such a fine morning to discuss business." "What do you want, Jarvis?" she asked without turning. "The council held an emergency session last night." His voice thickened. "Taxes are going up, especially on prime real estate, like this forge." June spun around. "You can't raise taxes mid-year." "Oh, but we can." He smiled, all teeth. "Unless, of course, you consider selling to me." "Get out," June said, gripping her hammer. "You have 30 days. His eyes narrowed. "Be smart." Before June could reply, another figure filled the doorway. Sheriff Elma Pike. Her voice was steady as steel. "Funny thing, Jarvis. I'm on the council and didn't hear a word about this emergency session." Jarvis stiffened. Must have been an oversight. Try again, Elma said. This time without lying. But Jarvis only tipped his hat and slithered away. June exhaled shakily. Be careful, Elma warned. He's after something. Badly. When Colt returned that afternoon, leading several horses, June felt relief she didn't understand. She watched him handle the animals gently, speaking to them like they were friends and not beasts. One mare trembled, eyes rolling. Juniper, Colt said softly. She's skittish. Been handled wrong. I can fix that, June murmured. She stroked the mare's nose, humming an old tune her mother used to sing. Slowly, Juniper calmed. Colt watched with quiet appreciation. You're good at this, he said. I have to be, she replied. That's all I've got. Nothing wrong with that. His smile deepened. Takes strength to build a life with your own hands. June swallowed. Strength she had, but she wasn't sure how long it would hold. Especially when the boy came running with a letter. Miss June, this came on the evening coach. June took the envelope. Her hands trembled as she broke the seal. Delinquent taxes. 30 days. Foreclosure. Her stomach twisted. This was wrong. She'd paid months ago. Colt stepped closer, concern in his eyes. June? What is it? Quote. She lifted the notice with a shaking hand. I think someone wants me gone. And in the glow of the setting sun, Colt Merrick looked at her the way a man looks at a storm on the horizon, ready to face it, ready to fight it, ready to stand with her, even if she wasn't ready to stand with him. How do you fight back when the whole world tries to take what you love? June barely slept. The forged tax notice sat on her table like a coiled snake. She kept reading the signature, the date, the crooked seal. Something was wrong. Something big. But dawn came anyway, painting Sagebrush Crossing in pale orange light, as if nothing had changed. Colt Merrick was already outside her shop, sleeves rolled up, working beside his men to move the wagon axle into place. He looked like he belonged there. Like he'd always belonged there. But June pushed the thought aside and forced herself to focus. Morning, Miss Hollis, Colt said gently when she stepped outside. She didn't answer right away. Her throat felt tight. I need to finish that axle today. And you will, he said. But first you need to breathe. She wanted to laugh, or cry, or scream. Instead, she grabbed her hammer. Let's work! Hours passed in a blur of iron and sweat. June shaped new bands for the cracked axle. Colt steadied the wooden beam while she hammered. Their movements fell into rhythm. Her swing, his hold, her strike, his brace. They worked as if they had been doing it for years. Around noon, trouble came riding. 3 men galloped down the street, dust spraying behind them. Their horses were lathered and frightened, and the men's faces held something worse than anger. Fear. Fire, one of them shouted. June's woodshed is burning. June's blood froze. She ran. Smoke billowed behind her forge. Flames shot from the wooden roof of the shed. Her winter supply of coal and charcoal going up in hungry orange fire. Neighbors were already forming a bucket line, yelling, throwing water, shouting orders. But June knew it was too late. Sheriff Elma arrived, snatching a half-burned oil bottle from the ground. Lamp oil, she muttered, deliberate. June's heart cracked like iron struck wrong. First, the tax notice. Now this. Jarvis Blackthorn's message was clear. Leave or burn. Colt appeared at her side and draped a blanket over her shoulders. His eyes were storm dark. This wasn't an accident, he said. June forced down the sting behind her eyes. It doesn't matter. I still have to work. You don't have supplies, Colt reminded softly. Before she could answer, Herr Vogel, old German blacksmith, pushed through the crowd holding a small sack. You take my charcoal, he said firmly. Your father helped me when I first came here. Now I help you. Then others stepped forward one by one, a bag of coal, a bundle of dry wood, a handful of nails, a few dollars. It wasn't enough to replace everything, but it kept her standing. June swallowed hard. Thank you. Colt leaned close. You see? You're not alone. But June wasn't ready to believe it. Later that afternoon, June worked on the axle again, but her hands trembled. Every hammer strike rang uneven. Colt stepped beside her, lifting the beam. "Want a break?" "No." "You're shaking." "No." "June," he said quietly, "it's all right to fall for a minute." Her hammer slipped. The metal rang sharp. She flinched. Colt took the tool from her hand and gently guided her to sit on a crate. "I know what it's like," he said. "To feel the world trying to break you, to think you're all alone." "You don't know anything about me," she whispered. "Then tell me." She didn't. But she didn't pull away either when he sat beside her. Minutes later, his men returned with food, giving June time to breathe. When she started working again, Colt was right there, steady, quiet, present. By sunset, the axle was finished. June's arms ached, but pride warmed her chest. "That's fine work," Colt said. "You saved us a week's delay." "No extra pay," June muttered, handing him the bill. He pressed more silver into her palm than she asked. "I'm paying for worth, not for hours." Their fingers brushed again. Heat rushed through June's cheeks. Colt stepped closer. "June!" Before he could finish, a distant scream tore through the air. "Fire! Fire at the church!" The whole town ran. Flames climbed the church bell tower, crackling and spitting sparks. The rope was burning through from the inside. If it snapped, the heavy bell would bring the tower down. "Someone's got to cut it loose!" Reverend Cole cried. Colt ripped off his vest. "Wet me down." June grabbed a bucket and dumped water over him, her hands shaking as they slid across his shoulders. Colt grabbed an axe and sprinted toward the tower. "Colt, don't!" June shouted. He looked back just once. "Someone's got to do it." Then he disappeared inside. The seconds stretched cruelly. Smoke poured from the windows. Sparks rained to the ground. June stood at the base of the tower, heart pounding, praying against her will. Then she heard it. Crack! The bell crashed to the ground harmlessly beside the church. Moments later, Colt stumbled out, coughing, shirtless, smoke-blackened, and alive. June ran to him without thinking and pressed her hands against his chest, searching for burns. "I'm fine," he whispered. "You're not." "June." His voice softened even more. "I'm here." She realized her hands were still on him. His were still on hers. People watched. June didn't care. Elma clapped Colt on the back. "Stupid, brave, proud of you." But June couldn't let go of the fear inside her. That fear twisted even deeper when Colt's younger brother rode up later with a paper. Another forged contract, this time against Colt's own ranch. Jarvis was trying to crush both of them. June looked at Colt, who stared at the paper with defeat, dulling his gaze. "You can't fight this," he muttered. "He owns everything." "Don't you dare," June said fiercely. "Don't you dare give up." "It's not just me," he said. "My men, my herd, my—" "And me," June snapped. "I need you too." He froze. June took a shaky breath. "You heard me," she said. "I need you. So don't run." Colt's chest rose and fell once, sharply. His eyes softened like the sky after a storm. "June!" His voice broke. But before he could say anything more, the night wind carried a new warning. The Corian brothers were coming, and they were killers. What happens when the whole town stands on the edge of losing everything, and the only way forward is to fight together? Snow slammed into Sagebrush Crossing like a living thing. One moment the sky was clear, the next it turned white and furious. Wind howled down the street, doors slammed, horses screamed, and the blizzard swallowed the town whole. June Hollis pulled her scarf tight as she stepped outside, fighting the wind just to stay upright. Her forge glowed behind her, but she couldn't stay inside. Not when Colt and his men were still out trying to round up the herd before the storm buried them alive. "Elma!" June shouted through the wind. "Has anyone seen Colt?" Sheriff Elma Pike pushed through the snow, her coat already covered in ice. "He went after the cattle." Sam and Eli with him. "June, get inside! This storm will kill you!" June shook her head. "I'm not hiding while he's out there." Elma grabbed her arm. "You step outside this town line, you'll freeze." But June had already untied the rope from her hitching post, wrapping it around her waist. She'd done this before. Her Shoshone mother taught her mountain sense. How to move through storms, How to survive what others couldn't. She leaned close to Elma. I'm not losing anyone. Then she stepped into the white void. Wind cut her face like knives. Snow slammed into her skin until she couldn't feel her fingertips. But June kept going, one hand on the rope, the other outstretched, feeling for anything alive. Then she tripped. A calf, half buried, shivering, bleating weakly. June dug through the snow with her freezing hands, pulling the little thing free. Its body trembled against her legs. Easy, baby. I've got you. A shadow moved through the storm. Sam. June, what are you doing out here? Saving who I can. Help me get him to shelter. Together they dragged the calf back to the stable. June shoved it into a stall, covered it in blankets, and turned back for more. June, wait, Sam shouted. But she was already gone. The world shrank to rope, snow, breath, fear. Then a hand grabbed hers, strong, warm, familiar. June! Colt's voice broke with relief. Are you out of your mind? Probably, she gasped. Where are the others? Sam's inside. Eli's driving the last group in. But the Wilkins family, they're still out at their cabin. We have to get them! I'll go. You stay. I'm going with you. He stared at her for half a second through the swirling snow. Then he nodded. Together. They fought their way across town like ghosts in white fog. They reached the Wilkins cabin half buried in a snowdrift. No smoke, no sound. Colt kicked in the door. Inside, the family huddled around a dead fireplace. The youngest child, Tommy, lay limp in his mother's arms, blue-lipped. Give him to me, June said. She pulled the boy close, unbuttoned her shirt, pressed his frozen skin to hers for body heat, like her mother taught her. She wrapped them both in blankets and rocked gently. Come on, little warrior, she whispered. Come back to us. Colt got the fire roaring, the cabin warmed by inches. Tommy's breathing grew stronger. When he finally opened his eyes, June exhaled a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. We need to move. Now, Colt said. Together they led the family back through the storm, nearly carrying them. The church became the emergency shelter. Lanterns glowed through foggy windows. People rushed to help, wrapping the children in blankets, pushing hot broth into their hands. June collapsed onto a bench, shaking. Colt dropped beside her. You're frozen, he murmured. So are you. But their shoulders touched, and that was enough heat to keep her steady. The night raged on, but the town survived because they stood together. The next morning the world was white and still. Snow piled as high as windows. Everything sparkled under a pale sun. But trouble hadn't blown away. Before noon, Jarvis Blackthorne stormed into the church demanding people pay for grain. Sheriff Elma drove him out at gunpoint. The town was done being bullied. Later, when news spread that Jarvis hired the Corian brothers, 2 killers, to enforce his forged claims, fear rippled through the people. Elma called an emergency meeting. We ride to the governor. We take the real documents. We expose everything. Colt stood. I know the mountain trails. I'll go. June rose beside him. I'm going too. Colt turned to her. June, you're not going without me. He stared at her for a long moment. Then he nodded. Together then. Quote, they rode for days through frozen mountains, dodging Corian scouts, crossing icy passes, helping each other stay warm at night, trusting one another with every step. And somewhere along the trail, something unspoken became something unbreakable. When they reached the governor, justice finally moved. Warrants. Marshals. Authority Jarvis couldn't buy or bully. They rode home with proof, with protection, and with hope. But Jarvis had one more trick. When Colt and June returned to town, Jarvis stood in the center with the Corians, a crooked judge, and forged papers declaring he owned June's forge in half the town. For a heartbeat, June felt crushed. Then federal marshals stepped out from behind the buildings. Guns raised. Judge Crane arrested. Corian brothers disarmed. Jarvis thrown in irons, screaming as he was dragged away. Sagebrush Crossing was free. People cheered. Folks hugged. Children ran wild with joy. Colt turned to June, dust and snow still on his coat. His voice was rough with emotion. June, I need to say this before anything else happens. Her heart pounded. "I love you," he said. "I reckon I've loved you since you glared at me over that anvil. I want to stay here, build something real with you." June swallowed hard. "I ain't no lady." Colt smiled slow and warm. "Good. That's what I came for, darlin'." And she kissed him there in front of the whole town. The forge survived. The town survived. Their hearts, tough, scarred, stubborn, had finally found home. And this time, no one was taking anything from June Hollis ever again.